Why people are leaving the U.S. West Coast. The West Coast of the United States has always been painted as a dreamscape, a land of beaches, mountains, and booming cities. From 1940 to 2020, the region grew by more than 42 million people, making it one of the greatest demographic success stories in U.S. history. But something surprising happened in recent years. Since 2020, more than 500,000 people have left California, Oregon, and Washington. Yes, left. This is despite the region's reputation for having a robust economy, pleasant weather, world-class scenery, and cultural capital that's the envy of the globe. So, what's going on? Why are so many people abandoning one of the most iconic corners of the United States? To answer that, we have to start at the beginning. Because for most of history, the story of the West Coast hasn't been about people leaving, it's been about people coming. The long story of migration. West tens of thousands of years before Europeans even imagined sailing to the Pacific, humans had already discovered its advantages. The coastal regions of present-day California, Oregon, and Washington offered salmon-rich rivers, fertile valleys, towering forests, and a temperate climate. Indigenous peoples such as the Coast Salish, Chinook, Pomo, and Chumash built thriving societies here, shaping landscapes long before California or Oregon existed. For newcomers, however, the geography of the American West posed obstacles. The Rocky Mountains formed a colossal wall separating the interior from the Pacific, and crossing them was no small feat. The story of America's westward expansion is, in part, a story of figuring out how to cross that wall. When the United States acquired these western territories in the 1800s, waves of migration followed. The Oregon Trail brought settlers into the lush Willamette Valley with promises of farmland, while the California Gold Rush of 1848 sparked one of the largest migrations in American history. Fortune seekers from every corner of the globe, Chinese miners, German craftsmen, Chilean laborers, all joined the rush. By 1850, California's population had surged to over 92,000 people, a staggering leap from its pre-Gold Rush numbers. The pattern was set. The West Coast allure came from its climate, resources, and opportunity. The rise of a regional powerhouse. By the late 1800s, agriculture cemented California's global reputation. The Central Valley became one of the most productive farming regions on Earth. Immigrants from Japan, China, the Philippines, and Mexico supplied the labor that kept the farms running. Farther north, the thick forests of Oregon and Washington fueled the timber industry. Logging camps and sawmills turned Douglas firs into the raw material of America's cities. At the same time, mineral wealth, silver, copper, coal, attracted miners deep into the mountains. Cities flourished. San Francisco blossomed into a hub of trade and culture, its harbor linking the U.S. to Asia. Los Angeles, once a dusty outpost, became the heart of the entertainment industry. Seattle grew into a shipbuilding and fishing center, its economy tied to the Pacific. The Great Depression and Dust Bowl of the 1930s sent waves of Midwesterners westward, with California seen as a land of escape and opportunity. By 1940, the collective population of the West Coast had reached nearly 10 million people. World War II and the post-war boom. World War II transformed the coast almost overnight. Boeing's factories in Seattle produced bombers. Portland and San Francisco's shipyards churned out naval fleets. Migrants poured in to take these jobs, swelling cities. After the war, the boom didn't stop. The West Coast became a hub of innovation, eventually birthing Silicon Valley. By 1950, California had over 15 million residents. By 2020, that number had reached 39 million. Washington and Oregon, too, expanded rapidly, hitting 7.7 million and 4.2 million, respectively. The Pacific coast had gone from a distant frontier to one of the most vital economic, cultural, and technological engines in the world. But then something changed. Around 2010, California's explosive growth slowed. By 2020, all three states, California, Oregon, and Washington, began to experience something almost unthinkable: population stagnation and even decline. The pandemic accelerated this. Suddenly, remote work made it possible for high-earning tech employees to ask a simple question: why am I paying $3,000 for a studio in San Francisco when I can live in Texas, work remotely, and have a backyard? And so, many left. Not just Californians, but also Portlanders, Seattleites, relocating to Idaho, Texas, Arizona, Tennessee, and Florida. For the first time in modern history, the West Coast wasn't just a magnet. It was a place people were actively leaving. The cost of living, a daily struggle. On paper, the West Coast still has everything: innovation, climate, scenery. But the reality of living here has become suffocating. Car dependency and gas prices. The West Coast was built for cars, unlike the rail-connected Northeast. Public transit exists, but in many places it's limited or unreliable. That means gas prices hit harder here than almost anywhere else. California has consistently had the highest gas prices in the country. In 2022, it broke $6.40 per gallon, double the average in Texas. Filling a 20-gallon tank in Los Angeles can cost almost twice what it would in Houston. For families already stretched thin, that difference adds up fast. Everyday costs, groceries, are also expensive. California families spend about $300 per week on food, above the national average of $270. Add in higher energy bills, higher insurance costs, and higher taxes, and the pressure mounts. But the biggest problem is far larger: the housing crisis. Housing is the defining issue of the West Coast. In San Francisco, the median home price is $1.5 million. In Seattle, it's $800,000 plus. Even in Portland, once the affordable option, median prices are nearing $550,000. Renters face similar struggles, with major city rents often topping $3,000 a month. The reasons are complex: restrictive zoning, local opposition to new construction, and regulatory hurdles all limit supply. The result is predictable: skyrocketing prices and a shortage of affordable homes. This has especially hurt essential workers, teachers, nurses, firefighters, who increasingly can't afford to live where they work. Many commute hours from distant suburbs. Others leave entirely, moving to states where their salaries stretch further. This is more than just a housing issue. It's a civic crisis. Schools can't keep teachers. Hospitals struggle to staff nurses. Fire departments are stretched thin during wildfire season. The very backbone of West Coast cities is eroding. Homelessness and inequality. One visible outcome of the housing crisis has been a rise in homelessness. California now has more than 170,000 unhoused residents. Washington has over 25,000. Oregon has more than 17,000. Encampments line highways and city sidewalks. For some, this has become the most visible symbol of the West Coast decline, a region where soaring wealth and desperate poverty collide side by side. The natural hazards of paradise. Even if you can afford to live here, the environment brings new challenges. Wildfires have become annual disasters. Summers often bring weeks of smoke-choked skies, with Portland and Seattle sometimes recording some of the worst air quality in the world. Droughts put pressure on water systems. Earthquakes remain an ever-present threat, particularly in California, where the San Andreas Fault is long overdue for a major event. Coastal flooding and sea level rise loom on the horizon. In other words, paradise has a price: the political landscape. The West Coast is also one of the most politically progressive regions in the country. California, Oregon, and Washington have enacted policies on climate change, public health, and social justice that are admired by some and criticized by others. For many residents who lean conservative, the cultural climate feels alien. As a result, some have relocated to states like Idaho, Texas, and Florida, which they see as more politically aligned. This political migration has contributed to America's broader polarization, turning the West Coast into both a symbol of progressive ideals and a cautionary tale for its critics. Remote work and the final push. The pandemic added a final twist. Remote work gave people the freedom to leave. Once families settled into more affordable regions, whether Nevada, Arizona, or Tennessee, the thought of moving back to $3,000 rents and $6 gas became laughable. For many, leaving wasn't temporary. It was final. What happens next? Today, Washington is rebounding slightly while Oregon and California continue to struggle. But the underlying problems, high costs, housing shortages, social service strain, natural disasters, remain unresolved. The West Coast still dazzles with its beauty. The beaches of California, the rugged coastline of Oregon, the evergreen forests of Washington. The region's cultural and economic contributions are immense, but the dream feels increasingly out of reach. Once people leave, whether for affordability, politics, or lifestyle, few ever return. This is a tough story to tell because I love the West Coast. I live here in Oregon, and I know how magical this region can be. The sunsets over the Pacific, the smell of pine forests after rain, the energy of cities like Seattle and San Francisco. It's unforgettable. But loving a place doesn't mean ignoring its problems. And unless California, Oregon, and Washington confront these challenges head-on, housing, affordability, wildfires, homelessness, fewer and fewer people will be able to share in this experience. The West Coast will always be beautiful, but will it remain livable? That's the question the next generation will have to answer. And if you found this story fascinating, you'll definitely want to check out my deep dive into the weirdest US-Canada border you've never heard of. Trust me, that one's even stranger. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.